Roselle was the one who showed up, so I know he's very active. Mr. Seeley, did you have a question, or you want to make a comment too?
No, sir, I'm ready to proceed with the public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Akers?
Ditto.
Ditto also. Okay. We'll now declare the public hearing open for the ordinance to amend Article 6 for the reduction of personal property taxes for active volunteers, active volunteer rescue squad, and fire company members. Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone who would like to speak regarding this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to say that I agree with that 100%. These gentlemen are out there all the time doing things that the rest of us are home watching television or whatever. And I really believe that's probably a wonderful thing you're getting ready to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beach. Mr. Beach, before you go, you are in the Madison district, right?
No, I'm actually in, what am I in? Bowling Green.
Bowling Green.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure
stop
we all
and think
knew
about that
Beach,
for a second. Yes.
We didn't want to have a mistake, so thank you very, very much.
You spent a lot of time in Madison.
The office was in Madison. That's what got me. Okay, is there anyone else who'd like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak regarding this matter? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak regarding this matter? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. The chair is ready to entertain a motion to approve this, a motion.
I make a motion that we accept the change as outlined in our packet.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Popowitz, seconded by Mr. Akers to approve the changes to reduce the personal property tax for active volunteers. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. And Mr. Roselle abstains. The motion passes 4-0 with one abstention. Okay, that takes us to the next agenda item, unfinished business. Item number 7, proposed amendment to Chapter 92 Sewers and Chapter 112 Water of the Code of Caroline to increase the availability fees. Mr. Schiebel, again, good to see you.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Before you tonight is the unfinished business of raising the possibility of raising water and sewer fees. As advertised, $4,000 total, $3,500 for the wastewater, $500 for sewer. Also, it includes continuing the existing residential connections on water, extending that discounted rate until December 30th of this year, as well as revalidating the definitions of all the definitions that were adopted by the board at the last time, and to clarify the term schedule in the definition as well. The county administrator has put forth a recommendation to raise the rates $2,000, $1,500 on the wastewater, $500 on the water side. Since our last meeting, I have had several phone calls from from builders expressing their concern of the availability fees, and raising them in this dismal market would only hamper them further than what they already are. And they feel that the one developer that's actually has done most of the connections this year, it's really going to wean what they have already are able to do if we do raise the rates. And feel that if we do that, instead of us being able to collect the $16,500 that we currently do, that their reduced connections would be a negative impact, even though we're raising the rates. So with that, I'll leave that to the board for any questions that you may have on my part.
I'm going to go this way this time. Mr. Akers?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We allow for reduced, and this was mentioned in the discussion earlier, or certainly during the public comment period. We do have a reduced cost for people to connect to water. It doesn't apply to sewer, it applies to water.
Today it was a continuation of what the board had adopted when we ran the water line down Ladysmith Road to Madison Elementary, which originated when we extended the water line down Route 1 between Commerce and Ladysmith. What this did it now does this for the Caroline Pines Route 652 water line extension, and allows a $2,800 availability fee, a reduced rate, for any existing residents along any of our water lines in the county.
Right.
So instead of it being the current rate of $8,000, this would allow them to connect at a $2,800 availability fee.
Okay. My question is, I know we have approved that ordinance to allow that to happen. My question is, how widely have we advertised it, number one? And number two, would it make sense for us to send a letter, and I don't know the cost of sending letters, but at least to the homeowners or the property owners along those stretch of roads that have homes, to let them know, hey, this is what the fee you could pay today, and hopefully we would increase, and get people to sign up for it at this point in time at the reduced cost, that they're not otherwise signing up for it. Allowing the same thing anywhere the line runs, on any road, offer that same opportunity to those people by sending a letter to them and giving them an opportunity to sign on at $2,800. My other is sewer. We do not provide that same option to people with sewer, and I guess that's because it's more difficult to hook on to a line that's just running down the road, hook sewer in.
Actually, the main reason is because the board has made that decision based on us installing new water lines and waiving the requirement of mandatory connections and waiving that.
Could it be done for sewer lines?
It could be, yes, sir.
All right, so my question is, should we offer it to people that have existing homes that the sewer lines are running down in front of and that is available to them? Do we offer it to those people as well for a discount on sewer? I think that to raise the rates today, the availability, and let me accept responsibility from the standpoint that I voted to enlarge or to enhance the wastewater treatment plant that we're going to enhance to. I think that was a requirement. I had builders come to me and developers come to me and say, we are uneasy about committing to do certain things in Caroline because we're not sure the availability is going to be there. So I felt like it was important to erase that concern that they had and to ease their minds that we were going to have availability. But to raise it by $4,000, to raise it even by $2,000 now, I think is probably an unwise decision for us to make as a county. Now, 6 months, 7 months down the road, that could be an entirely different story completely. But I think we do need to try to do everything we can now to increase revenue where we can. And it was mentioned that maybe there are other ideas out there. But again, is there something we can do as far as offering sewer discounts, connections for the people?
Mr. Akers, I can think of maybe a half a dozen homes that would impact, so it would not be a significant financial burden on Caroline County. On the water side, when we ran the water line down Route 1, we sent letters out to all those customers. When we ran the water line down Ladysmith Road to the new school, we sent it out to every customer that was connected next to a water line, sent letters out, but we can absolutely send them out again to all the customers that are adjacent to the water line.
Yeah, and the water line down Route 1 and the water line down 639 to the Lewis Clark School, that was several years ago.
Right.
Things change. I know it has for many of us as far as the water situation is concerned. I just believe it may help to offer that, and we may get some connections that we would not otherwise get in. Because we have to think of something. We have to come up with something. I think some of the builders and developers here tonight have offered their services to sit down and discuss hopefully innovative ways that they can help with that process. We need to take advantage of that. They have operated in other counties. They know how other counties do, and so we need to take advantage of that knowledge as well. So I would encourage that to happen. And again, I would encourage this board to, one, to postpone the implementation of a increase in availability fees until August, and we revisit the issue in August. But then also I would encourage at the same time to try to make open and give the other people opportunity that are on these lines to hook into it at a discount rate. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Seeley?
You had an interesting conversation with Mr. Schiebel during the break, which I think we should all at least have the opportunity to hear, is that once we get to the end of March, with the delay of paying fees for 3 months, that the end of March, we could actually see delays until 1 July of those fees being paid, the first 2 weeks in April. So in theory, what we could be looking at now are all the utility connection fees we could see for the rest of the year, for fiscal year 2010. Is that right, Mr. Shebel?
Yes, sir. The board adopted to assist the builders in their payment plan because of the way they get their draws from the banks. The board adopted a policy to give the builders 90 days to pay their availability fee. Because of that, anything that happened in April, May, and June of last year has now been paid in this year's budget. So the same thing, anything that comes in April, May, and June of this year technically could go into next year because they have the option of either paying it now or delaying that. So anything that we connect. With that being said, due to that, we're actually at 49.5 connections to date because of the money that actually is now been collected in this year. So technically we've collected 49.5 connections this fiscal year, but by the end of March, it's pretty much going to be the deadline to generate revenues in this budget year unless somebody pays up front or builds a house faster than the 90 days, because when they issue the CO is when they collect that money.
And I guess hearing that I will agree with Mr. Akers that I think August is a reasonable time. And I think with the builders that have been here tonight, and I'd like to hear what ideas they have at this point in terms of what could be done, how we can work together to sort of solve this problem, because the gap's getting bigger. I mean, if we only do 49.5 the rest of the year, we're still 31 short of our goal, 21 short of our goal?
Okay, 75 connections was our goal.
Okay, so
with
we're,
the budgeted amount.
so either way, raising the rate today doesn't solve the revenue gap that we've got. So I would like to echo Mr. Akers' sentiments of waiting till August and seeing if we can't figure out a way to solve this together.
Thank you, Mr. Seeley. Mr. Rozelle?
Yeah, I don't have a problem. I think it's a good idea for us to sit down with these guys and see if there are some creative ways that we can come up with some better ideas. It's worth a shot.
Ms. Poppins?
I think everybody here has echoed my sentiment. I had some discussions with the folks from the Builder Association earlier today, and echoed their concerns. And also, they've had already offered their help at that time. So I think that it's prudent that we at least see what we can come up with before we move forward with this. And I'd be for delaying a vote on this. So.
Okay. It's obvious that the board's desire is probably going to be to delay this. And there's a couple of other things that I'd like to focus on. The comments Mr. Akers had about trying to reestablish connections with the folks who are on existing lines that didn't connect. And I think if we can make the small investment of, what does the stamp cost now, 39 cents?
44.
Okay, I don't buy stamps. So anyhow, whatever the stamp costs, if we can make that investment of what stamps cost for a few folks, we may get some return. I personally am very much against mandatory connections because 8 years ago, I had my well went dry. I had to spend a lot of money to, dig a deep well. And if the town of Bowling Green had said, you have to connect to me, I would have not been happy. So I don't know how many of those other folks did, and I'm sure the builders who are not on county water are doing that same thing. And then if we run by and say, yeah, you got to connect now, I don't think that's a good thing for us. But I think what we've said, each and every board member has said in their comments or statement is, we want to do what we can to help the building industry. We want to do what we can to help Caroline economically, and I think the two are tied together. So we all want to delay. Mr. Rogers is here, and he's going to have to come and tell us how we're going to pay for all these bills. I was going to ask you, Mr. Shebel, if we don't do this, what do we do? But since Mr. Rogers is here, we're gonna put the weight on his shoulders and use his Alabama University brain to see what we can come up with. So, I mean, that's where we are. We're gonna delay it. I don't have a problem with waiting until August, because that's kind of, if we get July, August, or June, yeah, that's part of the money we're gonna be getting. It's in that 3-month time frame. So we'll put this off until August. We understand that it was a proposal the board asked you to do, So we could help pay for the investments that we thought were needed. So now we're just gonna try to look at another alternative to help pay for those investments. So,
Yes, sir.
thank you for your time and efforts.
Mr.
And-
Chairman, it is in order, though, if we could at least vote on the other two options. One, to recertify the list of definitions, as well as extending the availability fee on water for existing residents.
We have to carry over the, extending the fee for existing residents. Okay.
Extending the fee for existing residential connections at $2,800, as well as readopting the definitions for water and sewer standards.
I would say no, but Ben's not looking. Mr. Emerson, there's a question. We are considering adding sewer to the existing water connection. Would that require another public hearing? Because it significantly changes what we're doing? Okay, well, we'll work on the public hearing for sewer, if you could, Mr. Ashcraft, that's something we want to do right away. So to address your actual request, Mr. Shebel, I'm trying to find where I can read it
If
easily.
you actually look at the executive summary on the second page, items 2 and 3 would
I've got
clarify.
Yeah, I just had 3 files from you, so I'm sorry. You have, in your report, we have increasing water and sewer availabilities, which we're not doing. Number 2 and 3 would be extending until December 30th, 2011, the reduced availability fee for existing residential units currently using a private well or other water supply and having a county water line at the property to connect to the county water system for an availability fee of $2,800 for single-family residential unit, and $2,800 for a multiplied times the number of single-family equivalents. So that is the first resolution I guess we need to approve.
They could actually be in one motion.
He always gets sticky about that one motion stuff, so
I
we're gonna do
think-
2.
okay,
We're
that's
gonna do
fine.
2. So is there a motion to the effect of extending until December 30th to reduce the availability fee for water?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Popowitz. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. The second motion or discussion that we have would be the clarifying the definitions of the term schedule as it relates to sewer and water fees. Now, the proposed increases total $4,000, but we're not doing that. So what definitions do I need to approve here or have us approve?
It would be the existing, the only thing is changing there is the actual schedule. At the last time that we raised rates and did a change, we actually removed all of the rates out of the code and put it into a schedule. So if we just adopt the term of what a definition of schedule is, as well as revalidating the existing definitions, would do what we need to do.
But we're not actually changing the fees.
There was a,
We're not
the
changing
county,
fees.
the county attorney's office had a concern with the way we defined the term schedule in the original proposal. Because when we changed it, there was some issues in the way that it was worded, and they thought that we needed to change that definition for a schedule. I would not adopt the new schedule, but I would adopt the definition of what a schedule is.
Mr. Emerson, do you recall your issue, or somebody else had it?
I think the definition of schedule wasn't very clear, but Mr. Shebel's right. The change is simply to adopt a definition of the word schedule, not a new schedule.
All
So
right.
it wouldn't change any of the fees.
All right, let's try this on for size. We will adopt the definition of the term schedule as it relates to sewer and water fees, and that the existing sewer and water fees will remain in place now.
My motion is just to see.
Second.
All righty, we're just twins here. So Mr. Akers and I made the motion, Mr. Popowitz made the second, so we're basically just defining the term schedule as it relates to water and sewer fees without any increase or without any change in the fees as they exist today.
That's correct.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Shebel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ashcraft? You need 5 minutes? Oh, okay, that's not a bad idea. But no, I wanted to ask you if you would get on our agenda a sewer change that would be the same as the water one we had.
First reading could be,
Into January.
Well, that's next Tuesday.
probably February. I don't know that we can move it next week. We only have,
It's gonna have to be March, because I
Oh,
don't think
yeah.
there's enough time.
Yeah, oh, we gotta advertise. Oh, fool.
So it's March.
So we're
we
not
could,
gonna,
no, we
okay.
could do first reading, could we do first reading next week? And the public hearing on the 10th?
Next week, the agenda comes out, on Friday.
Yeah, but just because it's on the agenda, they don't have to, it's a cut and paste. You
We'll
just
do-
change water to
do
sewer.
First reading next week, and the public hearing would be on February the 10th, and you could vote on it that night if you chose to do it.
Excellent. We will authorize staff to have a public hearing date of February, what is it?
10.
10th. Okay, we're good.
You need a motion for that?
Yeah, let's take a motion.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize staff to advertise for a public hearing on
February 10th.
February 10th for reduction or a discount sewer rate hookup for existing homeowners. That the
Second.
line runs,
Along the existing line.
yeah, along existing lines.
Have your second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Akers made the motion. Mr. Popowitz made the second.
Do you want the, I'm sorry, do you want the discount to be similar to the water?
Well,
The same percentage.
yeah, I think that
Yeah.
it needs to be something that's going to get people to,
Attractive.
right, attractive people.
Attractive. Okay. It's, Joey, it's,
I was just going to say, the 2,800 came from the original fee that we charged for the availability fee when you all had originally adopted that, and we've just extended that. Now, we went from 2,800 up to 4,000 something, then to 6,000, and now we're at 8,000, but that was that old fee. The same fee at that time for sewer would have been 3,200, went to 6,000 as well. So those are kind of the two numbers that you would do, or we could do, as you suggested as well, as a percentage of what that is. But it was the old availability fee is what the $2,800 is. That was the original fee, 2003-04 timeframe.
We'll get there, too.
One question, this is only for existing homes,
Right.
correct? Not lots, but homes.
Homes.
That's what the water.
I'm just making sure we're doing the same thing.
And again, the gravity lines they're spread out down in the middle of creeks and valleys, and there's not a lot of residents in those areas where the water line, we run that down the middle of Route 1.
Right.
And we're very specific of where we run those because they don't make a difference where gravity, we've got to try to follow the natural lay of the land to get to the wastewater treatment plant. So they're far and few between to find actual connections that can connect to the sewer.
I mean, we may not find any, but it's not gonna be for lack of trying.
That's correct.
And I think that's really what we're trying to do. So your motion is public hearing, you made the second, and your motion included the $3,200 fee. Okay, did I pass that already? Was there discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. So that motion carries unanimously. So we're ready to go. Is the mid-year budget report gonna be electronic? Are you just gonna come up and talk about it? Do you have a PowerPoint or something? All right, let us take, it's 8:53. Let us take about a 7-minute break, and we'll be back at exactly 9 o'clock. That gets us to 9 o'clock. All right, we'll be back at 9 o'clock. So next, I was gonna save you, but no, stay there. Stay there. I was gonna save you because Mr. Ashcraft wasn't back, and I was gonna do Mr. Fincham's too while he wasn't here, but he showed up, so you're next. You could, we would have been done, but. Yes, ma'am. No. No, we're good, totally. We're just gonna discuss it, and at this point in time, the committee hasn't met yet, so it's just gonna be a quick, we'll say. Okay, at this point in time, we are moving to agenda item number 9, which is the fiscal year 2010-11 mid-year budget report. Mrs. Hatcher is at the helm and ready.
Good evening, Chairman Thomas, members of the board, Mr. Ashcraft. Included in your packet is the second quarter report for fiscal year 2011. As you can see by the report, total operating revenues are up slightly. They're up. The total revenues, operating revenues for the 6 months is $34 million compared to $33 million for the same period last year, which is about a 1% increase. Total operating expenditures are also up slightly, $34.6 million compared to $33.9 million. I want to stress of part of that increase, $531,113 of the $777,000 increase is as expenditures due to the expenses of the recent borrowings being recorded at the time of the borrowing. When we had borrowings in 2009, those expenses didn't get recorded until right before the auditors showed up. We're doing them as we're supposed to be doing them. It's an expense on paper, but the expenses were in the borrowing, but because of accounting purposes, we have to record them on the paper. So it's not actually money that y'all just laid out. General fund revenues are $350,000 higher than last year. Part of this increase is fact, as Beth stressed earlier, for moving the 911 funds to the general fund. Property tax collections are $455,000 higher than last year due to increased collection efforts and slight increase in assessments on the personal property. Sales tax revenues are also up, as are consumer utility taxes. Permits, as noted earlier, are up slightly due to the increased building permits. Miscellaneous revenue is down, which is down basically because last year at this time we had an unclaimed property sale of $170-some thousand, which we don't have again. It was a one-time deal. Most of your general fund expenditures are up, but most of the departments are still within the 50% threshold, so we're holding expenses where they should be. The monthly operating legal costs are also at the 50% threshold. Other legal expenses are up due to the recording of debt service costs associated with the RAN borrowing in July and continued litigation costs for Clark's Cut and Verizon franchise. Professional services are up due to the general reassessment and the radio consulting expenses, which weren't in the 2010 budget. Judicial costs are up mostly due to the hiring of the administrative assistant for the circuit court judge, which also was not in your budget at this time last year. Emergency services expenses are up due to the 5 new employees hired under the SAFER grant and additional grant expenditures, of which revenues are recorded for that. Charges for correctional institutions are higher due to actual increase in prisoner days. We had, in the 6 months, 1,993 more prisoner days at Pamunkey this year than we did at the same time last year. It's almost 2,000 more prisoner days. School operating expenditures continue to be slightly lower than the same period last year and are below the 50% threshold. Social services and CSA expenditures are higher than last year, but they're still right at the 50% mark, so we haven't gone over. Tourism revenues are lower for the second quarter, but slightly higher for the year, basically due to the Boy Scout Jamboree. Tourism expenditures are lower due to the reorganization of personnel earlier in the year. Debt service payments are running about the same as they were this time last year, but by the end of the fiscal year, debt service payments will be higher due to the increased debt. Annual debt service payments for school-related projects running 63% of your total debt service payments. Capital projects consist of those projects that are ongoing from previous years, except for the purchase of the 4 police cruisers for the Sheriff's Department. Revenue transfers to cover these expenses have not been made as of yet. Second quarter operating revenues for Carolina Utilities show a 2% increase. This is basically a net increase based on the 5% increase in rates and a decrease in the consumption due to the drought and water restrictions that we had for the period July through November, roughly. Collected availability fees are higher than last year, but well below the 50% threshold. Utility fund operating expenses are lower than last year, while debt service payments are higher due to the additional debt. Debt service includes costs related to the latest bond issue, which were included in the latest bond issue. Based on the first half of the year, the county financial picture looks stable. If the revenue collections and expenditures continue at the same rate by the end of the year, we should still be stable. We're not going to win any grand amounts, but we're not going to lose any grand amount either. Any questions? That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Hatcher. Any questions from the board members? Ms. Popowitz?
No, sir.
Mr. Rozelle? Mr. Seeley?
I have one question, I just have to find it. On page 8, and I'm looking at the personal property tax, and I'm looking at amended budget for 2010, 2011, and the amended budget for 2009, 2010. And I have to say that it looks like we have an increase of $700,000 in just personal property. On the revenue side.
Mm-hmm.
So was that something that that's something that we've always planned on in the budget?
When the 2010 budget was proposed, my numbers were probably low. I did not take into consideration at that time the change in the personal property assessments from 40 to 50%. And since then, we have approved the raising of the rest of the business personal property and a few things that weren't done earlier. So that would account for part of the difference. And the collections have been stepped up. They've been much stronger of getting the taxes collected than what they were previously.
So we went from a 40% to we've changed the percentage we collect from last year to this year? We went from 40% to 50%. I guess.
Yes.
That was last year. But at the time I did the 2010 budget, which you're comparing it from one year to the next, I did not have that. I did not know. I knew, but I didn't have a clue what the result was going to be. So I was probably low in personal property taxes as far as the budget was concerned for fiscal year 2010.
But we need to keep in mind that the Commissioner of Revenue is the individual that assesses those percentages. The board does not.
Right.
Commissioner of Revenue has sole authority over whether it's a 40% or 50% or 100%. And it's not the board that has control over those numbers.
And they were raised on vehicles, and then since in the business personal property and other personal property has also been raised as far as the amount of assessed value of what's taxed.
I'll come see you about this, because what we collected last year, I mean, I know we don't have the year-ending figures. Well, we have the adopted budget for, I guess, just to this point in time. So did we collect more last year that we're not seeing in this projection? over what we are seeing this year? Did we collect more in 2009, 2010 than we're showing in this actual schedule?
Mm-hmm.
This is 6 months.
This is only 6 months.
Well, I understand, but I'm looking at the amended budget and the adopted budget, and the
Personal
same
property?
thing, but the
Yeah.
adopted budget should have been higher for last year, or the amended budget should have been higher at the conclusion.
What you're seeing is the actual budgeted amounts, the projection. You're not seeing the real amount that we actually received. So that delta of 700,000 may have been a lot less, if that's the crux of your real question.
Right, because what I'm looking at are two sets of numbers, and if neither one of them are real, they're just projections, then what's the real number from last year, and where are we in relation to the real numbers?
Are you talking with this and this, and this and this?
Yeah,
That's the real number we collected during the first 6 months.
Right.
Right, but you don't have the end, you don't have the end number.
You don't have the 12-month, because
Right.
that
This is-
that was given to us in, probably at the
At the-
year end, back
Yes.
June 30th or 1st
Right.
of July.
I'm only doing 6 months and 6 months.
See, what you're saying, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what you're saying is the budget last year was $700,000 more than the budget this year.
no, this year's is 700,000 more than last
Yeah,
year.
yeah,
That's
I'm
correct.
Right,
Right, so is the question, are we gonna grow another $700,000? Or did we collect a lot more last year than you see, so you can't match the two? And I suspect is we collected a lot more last year, we're just not showing the actual final number on this particular sheet of paper. But I'd probably guess it was 5,300,000 or something in that nature, based on the 52% and the 54% and where we are. But Mrs. Hatcher, I'm sure you have that number, maybe not with you, but you can provide that to Mr. Sealy at some point in time.
Actually, I have
you don't
that
have to
number
do it
with me.
right now, because
I have
I've
it
got
with
this
me.
so written on now, there will be no fixing it.
When,
Okay.
on personal property, on top of that, when we estimate personal property taxes, we have the information that's given to us by Ms. Carter for assessed values. I historically go back and look, when I do the budget, to see how the collections are running. At the time I did the 2010 budget, the collections were running lower than they are currently running. So when I do the budget, I give a projected collection number, not what the total assessment may be. And I had done it lower based on historically not collecting all the revenues that should have been collected. They have
Okay.
now stepped up that enforcement and gone after quite a bit more, so the collection rate is actually higher now than it was this time last year. So when I do budget, I also do it based on collections, and I probably did my budget based on a percentage throughout the year of only about a 93%, where it's actually running higher than that.
Okay, because it, just to me, looking at this, it looks like we've got an additional $700,000 coming in this fiscal year.
Right. And that's not the case. But we actually, for planning and budgetary purposes, we like the fact that you're very conservative
I am
about
very
that
conservative.
projection, because theoretically, we see, air quotes, extra money, or what we assume is extra money because we budgeted lower, which is a lot better policy than budgeting higher and not meeting that number. As
I mean,
we've
there's
seen
no way
with
you
other-
can budget the total amount of the assessment, because you're not gonna collect it.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
there's always gonna be exonerations, abatements, supplements that play into it, but then collections.
But I think that, based on what, the new information that we received from the commissioner, you probably are going to get close to $700,000 more revenue.
Yeah.
But that was built into the budget, so we had $700,000 more of expenses. We didn't raise taxes this past year. So a lot of that was because of the additional revenue. So I think there's probably about $700,000 of additional revenue coming in this year, but it was in the budget. And so we have, if you look at the expenditure side, you're gonna find that we spent it. A lot of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. If you want, at a later point in time, you can provide the actual number